Hi everyone, my name is Sarah and I'm happy to share with you my miracle story. About 10 or 11 years ago, when I was 15, I suddenly became deaf in my right ear one day. I vividly remember picking up the telephone, placing it over my right ear as normal, unable to hear a sound. I told my mom to get the phone fixed, but she said it worked just fine. So I tried listening with the other ear and it worked. So I thought, it was summertime. It felt like water was in my ear. So I remember tapping my head, trying to get the water out, and even tried sleeping on my right ear in order to let the water drain. But after 2 weeks of no success, we set up an appointment with the ear doctor for the purpose to drain the water from my ear. But it wasn't water. The ear doctor told me I was deaf in that ear due to a virus and never gave me an MRI. Now, he didn't do any tests to confirm it was a virus. He just said sometimes the virus gets in the cell and knocks out your hearing. And anyways, I was confused. I never heard of that happening to someone else, and I was devastated by the sudden change. I wanted my hearing back. But I managed to get by and continued my life for 10, 11 years. I had just graduated from college and was given several options of where I wanted to do my student teaching for the fall. After praying about the decision, I felt strongly that I needed to be in Arizona. There was several states that I could have chosen, but for that 4-month window, I chose to be in Arizona. I had never lived there before, and I was excited for the new experience. I remember hearing about a hearing device that helps people who are deaf in one of their ears from my uncle. He lives there and happened to have a coworker who happens to be deaf in one of his ears, and who he knew for quite a long time until this one day when his coworker tried picking up the phone and tried talking with his bad ear and said, "Oh, I forgot to put my sound bite in this morning. I'm deaf in one ear." My uncle asked what he was talking about and wondered if this hearing device could work for his niece, me. So I was invited over to their house for dinner one weekend, and my uncle told me about it and encouraged me to check it out. I was a little skeptical, but curious in finding out if it really could work. So I set up an appointment. Fortunately, the doctor could see me so quickly. He was one of the few doctors that knew about this recent invention that had only been out a year. And he asked what my diagnosis was of my MRI 10 years ago, and I told him I never got one. It was just a virus. And he just was shocked. He said, "Well, we got to get you an MRI before we get you fitted for the hearing device to rule out the possibility of a tumor." I actually remember laughing and said, "A tumor? Don't you think if I hypothetically had a tumor that was growing in my head for over 10 years, I would know by now?" And he said, "Well, it's not likely, but we need to make sure." So I had an MRI scheduled for the following week. I was not a bit worried, concerned, thinking, like, what if it was a tumor? It wasn't. It was just a virus, and, I just thought it was an obligation to get this MRI before this hearing device. So a month prior, I felt a strong sense of urgency to complete all the observations in my portfolio binder early for student teaching. As a result, I finished it on my 25th birthday. I was on top of the world. I just graduated. I was loving life and finishing my student teaching. And I remember closing my eyes and blowing out the candles on my birthday cake, wishing and hoping for a wonderful upcoming year. The day after my birthday was the follow-up appointment with the ear doctor. It was a sunny day in Phoenix, Arizona, and I just kept smiling. I was so happy and felt so fortunate to find out about this hearing device. I couldn't wait to hear again in my right ear. And as I walked in, the receptionist, who I'm assuming must have been new, handed me my MRI findings. And I sit down all alone and read the first line that said, "There's a large enhancing mass on the right posterior part of your head, of the brain, something like that. And I remember looking up to see if they had the right person, thinking, it couldn't be me. And I thought, right posterior part of the brain, I am deaf in my right ear. I started getting hot, and I could barely breathe, like the air was all of a sudden sucked out of the room. I felt dizzy and just complete shock and devastation. I didn't know what to think. I didn't know what the receptionist was thinking, oh, it was just horrible. Anyways, the doctor called me in and reconfirmed the news that I did have a brain tumor, and he was so fascinated by the size of the tumor that as he was showing me in my MRI scans, he kept zooming in on the images. So I am just a mess and thinking I'm dying. He didn't mention that the tumor, acoustic neuroma tumor, was not cancerous. So I was thinking I was dying. Anyways, after that whole mess, I just remember crying by myself in the car, thinking, how could I go back to my roommates? Where would I have the surgery? How could I break the news to my mom? So I finally got up the courage, picked up the phone, called my mom, and after hearing her voice on the other line, I burst into tears again. I just lost it. My mom said she would get me the hearing device for my birthday present. So she was expecting me to let her know how much it cost. And anyways, I told her that I had a brain tumor, and it was big. I didn't really know all the details of, I just found out the news, but it was not good. And after, she was crying and I was crying, and after she was consoling me for a little bit, she just said, Sarah, the bigger the tumor, the bigger God can show up. And I thought, you're right. So, so she flew out to Phoenix to talk to a neurosurgeon with me. And because I had completed my student teaching observations and portfolio binder the day before, I was granted an early release with full credit. So that was a tender mercy from the Lord, or I would have to go back and redo my student teaching. So we talked to the neurosurgeon, and he was just amazed at my overall well-being, and he said he was a world-renowned neurosurgeon and happened to specialize in my rare kind of tumor, acoustic neuroma. And he just said, this is the largest acoustic neuroma I've ever seen. The categories are small, medium, large. Mine was about twice the size of the large, gigantic, 6 centimeters. And he just said it's urgent because it's pushing on the brainstem, significantly displacing it. And I've been having symptoms for the past 10 years, but not like crazy, I just got blood work done saying something's not right, and everybody kept saying, oh, it's all in your head, because the blood work kept coming back normal, and literally it was all in my head. So I just said, yeah, I've been having some symptoms, but nothing crazy. And he was just amazed. He said this surgery is going to be like open heart surgery. It's going to take 3 days, 12 hours each. It doesn't get bigger than this because we're right there on the brainstem. The predicted outcome would be complete facial paralysis on my right side because the tumor had been stretching out my facial muscle on my right side for over 10 years, and so when they removed that tumor, my face would drop. And what were the other stroke, tumors in the back of the head. They worry about breathing and swallowing, so if you can't breathe, then they put you, give you a tracheostomy for the rest of your life. Or if you can't swallow, then you're hooked up to a feeding tube. I would have raspy voice, blurred vision. Yeah, there was a long list, and I just responded, just pull the plug. I don't want to live like that. I don't know who does. And I just said, either I'm having a full-blown miracle, or I'm not doing any of this half stuff. I'm either, there's life on the other side. I'll just go to heaven, or have this miracle. And I promised God, in the waiting time before surgery, I said, if I can have this miracle, I'll be your spokesperson, and I'll tell everybody your miracle, what you did. So throughout that time, I remember a quote that said, if you want to talk to God, then pray. And if you want Him to talk to you, then read His Word, read the Scriptures. So my mom and I went to the temple. We're Mormon. And we went to the temple. It's where we go to receive, great direction and worship the Lord. And I opened up the Bible in one of the chapels, and we just prayed, we need peace of your will, we need guidance. And I opened right to Psalms, a verse in Psalms that said, let God be magnified. And I felt that He was going to show Himself, that He wanted to show Himself through this. I just needed to have the faith and complete trust in Him. And so I stopped complaining. I stopped being mad at the doctor 10 years ago who never gave me an MRI. I stopped being mad that I was a victim to such a misdiagnosis. And I started believing in a positive outcome. I kept thinking about the different miracles that I had seen in my life that helped build up my faith. And my dad passed away from cancer and was given only 6 months to live. But I watched as his life was extended 8 extra years. I had just graduated from college with a difficult degree of the Lord's choice. He told me to major in this, and I felt Him carry me every step of the way. My mom drove home from a wreck, and the car mechanic afterwards just said, there's no way that you drove home because the steering canal completely cracked in half. There was no steering. And she prayed and drove home from this accident. So I just kept thinking, if God can do all this, surely I can have no complications and my life can go on. So the last thing I remember praying before surgery, before the anesthesiologist injected the syringe, was praying in my mind, oh God, this is it. It's your time to shine. Both hands are up. And I don't remember if I said in this video, but the surgery was suspected to be 3 days long, 12 hours. That's how complicated it was. But I only had 1 day surgery, 13 hours. And the surgeon just said it's very uncommon, especially in brain surgery, not to run into any issues, but everything was just smooth sailing, and he gave the credit to God for that. My predicted stay was several weeks in the hospital. I walked out after 5 days and was off all pain medication after 7. I had 0 complications. And the biggest miracle of all was that I did get my hearing back. The doctor, I was in the ICU room and I'm snapping. I'm like, I can hear. And I called my sister and could hear her voice in my right ear for the first time in 10 years. I was so excited. I had been praying for my hearing to come back for 10 years. And it was just amazing. My surgeon came in and he's just like, you can't hear, you're making it up. He's like, it's just scientifically impossible. I was looking in your head and the tumor completely destroyed the entire hearing canal. There's no ear in your head. There's no way you can hear. So I don't know if there's a conduit or whatever on my right side, but I can hear and I couldn't before. So praise God. I think that was his little way of showing off. But God lives, and I'm just so grateful for this miracle in my life. During this past year, just pondering how amazing it is to be able to hear again in both of my ears, the Lord taught me that although restored hearing is amazing, restored hope is more miraculous. Restored hope in God, that He lives and He loves you and listens to your prayers and does the impossible. Hope in the medical community. Hope in the future that good things happen, that disasters can turn into amazing things by relying upon the grace and power of Jesus Christ. Miracles really do happen today, and it's time to believe in miracles again. I just want to close this story by sharing with you the importance of being spiritually prepared for life's sudden hurricanes. We're all going to have to go through different challenges. Hopefully you won't have to go through a brain tumor, but that's part of life. We all, our faith is being tested, and trials were never intended to crush our testimonies. They were meant to build them up. And as we fill up a reservoir of faith throughout our lives, we'll be able to know where to turn to receive peace and direction. We will be able to think, God, if God did this and this, then surely He can help me out now. And I just give all the credit to God. He's amazing, and He lives. So it's exciting to think what He can do in your life.